record. Let me know if it doesn't work. Thank you. All right. I apologize, everyone.
No problem. You are very welcome. No worries. All right. So again, everybody. So my name is Jua Howard, Assistant Director in the Office of Undergrad Admissions at UC Berkeley. And again, I'm joined by my colleague, Andrea from UC Irvine. And as she'll introduce herself a little bit in a few minutes with another section of the program. But today, what we're going to focus on is sharing some information about the University of California's admissions process, and also really sharing some useful tips on how to effectively navigate through the University of California application. So before we really jump into the application, I'd like to really stress that there are many reasons why students decide to choose a UC campus. So the first section is going to focus on what we have to offer as a world-class university system. So you all have a solid understanding of how one of our campuses may be a really wonderful fit for you. So in highlighting our commonalities, I'm going to begin by discussing the value of a UC degree. And we really want you all to understand that attending and earning a bachelor's degree from any UC campus is a worthwhile investment in time and money. I'm going to cover some key topics really quickly that are integral to the UC experience, and honestly, really important factors in any student's college search. These are things you should be thinking about anyway when we talk about factors that are going to be important to where you may decide to apply and ultimately attend. So diversity of the student population, range of campus sizes, not only land size, but student population size, retention and graduation rates, support services, and also alumni success. So really starting out, taking a broad view of the UC system. All of our campuses are public research institutions, and all of us are highly ranked, with actually 6 of the 9 campuses being in the top 11 public schools in the country. And I always highlight that because it really speaks to the reputation and quality of the UC experience. And what's really cool is, though, each of us have a very distinct kind of culture and vibe and personality to our campuses, which really helps in you as you do your research, learning about each of us and really seeing how it may be a fit for you. But in addition to those different personalities, we also range in size from about, medium-sized campuses to large campuses. So for instance, UC Merced has approximately 8,000 students, but UCLA has over 46,000. And so you really want to take into consideration, again, the size of the campus. And so throughout all 9 of us, as you see, the average enrollment size is 25,000 students. And so again, that is an important factor in your college search. So I always want to highlight that when you think about the UC system as a whole. And then we're also really proud of our retention rates. As you see, our 1-year retention rate as you start as a freshman going into your sophomore year is 92%. So our students tend to stay and enjoy themselves. And we're very, very proud of that fact. That's a high percentage rate across, again, 9 campuses. Now, the system itself, we are very much committed to enrolling a broadly diverse and global student body. That encompasses a myriad of different factors from cultural, racial, geographic, and socioeconomic background in diversity. And that's for students in California, throughout the United States, and throughout the world. And all of our campuses are diverse, and we strive to make our students feel welcome and valued. And while we can always do more, and every single year we are striving to do better, not only as individual campuses, but as a system to improve our representation on all of our campuses. Many of our campuses actually are minority serving institutions and not predominantly white institutions. And I don't think a lot of people know that fact. But what is really important to know as well is that no matter how you may identify whatever communities that you're a part of, our campuses admit, enroll, support, and graduate students from all different backgrounds. And as you see, we rank top in the United States for awarding bachelor's degrees to minority students. And all of our campuses offer all kinds of support, academic, cultural, emotional, and community support to our students, no matter how you identify, and again, whatever communities that you are part of. So We have cross-cultural centers, such as UC Berkeley's Bridges Multicultural Center, which really empowers underrepresented students of color. We offer first-generation student initiatives, such as the First to Go program at UCLA, Riverside's Trio Scholars Program. We have services for our students with disabilities, all kinds of disabilities, and they exist on all of our campuses, such as the Student Disability Center at UC Davis. We also each have international centers that support our international population through advocacy, advising, immigration services. And I know especially in Montgomery County specifically, there are a lot of students who may be an international student. We want to make sure that you know, again, you will have support in our system. And then students who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. We have resources throughout our campuses, such as the LGBT Resource Center at UC Irvine. And a lot of these programs offer refuge and sanctuary for students who are part of this community, and they cultivate self-awareness and self-empowerment. And then we highly value our students who have served our country in different branches of the military. So we have veteran services, such as our peer mentors at the Veterans Resource Center at UC Santa Cruz, as an example. So again, there's a lot of support for you all as students, no matter, again, whatever communities that you're part of, whatever your background. And now, I'm gonna highlight a few experiences that are shared and offered to students at all of our campuses. So these are shared across the system. Again, I talked about the different support services that we all offer, such as academic tutoring. We have career centers to wellness and counseling programs. But one that I'll really highlight that I think is always one of my favorite is actually the UC library system. It actually comprises the largest university research library in the world, with over 100 libraries throughout the system. So even if you, let's say, attend UC Berkeley, but UC Irvine has a book that you need to access, you can do so. So we do share resources in that way. All of us are research institutions that I mentioned earlier, so you are able to work with world-renowned faculty, and it could be research that's STEM related, but you may be an English major, you can do research. Our research programs encompass all of our different academic disciplines. And our faculty, we're talking about Nobel laureate winners, Pulitzer Prize winners, MacArthur Fellowship winners. So our faculty are next to none, and you get to work with them firsthand. One of my favorite programs actually is the UCDC program. So for you all coming out of Montgomery County, this is a really cool program where you may want to come back to the East Coast for a semester and live in our DC center. And this allows you to have an internship for a semester, and you may have an internship, let's say on Capitol Hill or in one of the Smithsonian's. And really one of the cool facts about this program is that you'll get to live with students from all 9 UC campuses. So that'll really help you get a sense of the UC community. And then finally, the UC Educational Abroad program. I know a lot of students always want to do study abroad, and it's been very hard during this pandemic, but we're slowly, hopefully, being able to reopen in certain key ways as we still navigate this. But in a normal space, our program is actually one of the best in the world. We have over 300 different programs in over 40 different countries, and we partner with over 100 different universities. So I always tell students to take full advantage of that program. And again, that's something that we share as a system. And then definitely, if you're talking about alumni success is very important. As you see, graduation rates, highly important. I will stress this, the actual average 6-year graduation rate for the United States is about 58%. You see, for our system, it's 85%. So we're very proud of that. And for why students, even with the 6-year graduation rate, a lot of our kids are in dual enrollment programs, they're in specialized programs. So it ranges from that fact. But we definitely are very proud of that graduation rate. And in addition, because we teach our students to be critical thinkers, to digest cutting edge information, we rank our campuses as a whole, often rank in the top for graduate salaries from public universities. So when you're talking about money, a lot of times that's the thing. If I come out of this school, what am I going to be paid? What are my career opportunities? That's important. And then when you are part of the UC campus, you're not only part of the alumni network at your respective campus, but part of the overall UC system alumni network, which is over 2 million throughout the world. And they have everything from career counseling, networking opportunities. So again, you're becoming part of a large family. And then going back to once again, salaries. Your earning potential is very important. When our graduates from UC campuses earn more than the median income for all California graduates within 6 years of earning their degree, and this is really cool, they double their earnings within their first 10 years after graduation. That is highly important. So again, these are some things to think about when it comes to understanding the value of earning a UC degree. Now we're going to shift gears and start talking about admissions. How do we get you to one of our campuses? And I'm going to hand it over to Andrea.
Thank you, Jua. So I'm going to give, this is a little bit macro. So we are going to get to the point where we walk you through a few things in the application that you need to know. But before we get there, it's really important for you to have a better understanding of the big picture, because this will impact how we're going to read what you wrote on the application. So if you have a better understanding of the University of California requirements and our comprehensive review, you'll have a better understanding of what you should be writing. Before I get into that, just a little introduction of myself. My name is Andrea Helfer-Yothers. I'm one of the out-of-state admissions counselors for UC Irvine. I've been with UC Irvine for 9 years as a regional recruiter. I'm based outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I cover plus or minus parts of the eastern half of the US. Prior to that, I worked at our system-wide headquarters with all of the UC campuses while living in California, in Northern California. And prior to that, I was an admissions counselor at UC Santa Barbara for about 5 years. So I've really had the fortune of visiting all the campuses and getting to see how all the campuses use this, not just how UCI uses this. And just to echo what Jua said, all of our campuses are great. So trying to find that right fit for you is really great. One thing you don't have to worry about is adjusting what you're going to write on the application based on which campuses you're applying to. We all look at the same information, but we each make our own decision. So that is something that you can take to heart, that each UC is looking at the information you wrote on the application, but we're going to look at it for each campus and how it fits for UCI and how it fits for Santa Barbara, Berkeley, Davis, any of the UCs that you're applying to. We'll each read your application thoroughly. We'll actually have at least two people read through it to make sure we're giving you the best understanding possible. Now, as we're reading through your application, we're really looking at two different pieces that kind of combine. So we're looking at the academic factors and at something we call the comprehensive review. Now, the academic factors, this is where we're looking at your grades and your test scores. We're looking at, or not your test scores, sorry, autopilot there for a moment. We're looking at your GPA and your academic subjects. So what classes did you take? Did you challenge yourself? Did you really, did you take those AP or IB courses? Did you take the honors course? Did you look for classes that were in your major of interest? Those are things that we'll look for as we're looking through the application. We're also going to be looking at the grades you received in those courses. So not just what classes you took, but also the grades you received in those. Now, a question I get a lot is it harder for an out-of-state student or an international student to get into a UC campus than a California student? And the answer is no. However, one of the things that does kind of perpetuate that is that the minimum GPA is different for an in-state and out-of-state student. Now you can see on the screen there, if you're a California resident, your minimum GPA is a 3.0 to be minimally eligible for the UCs. If you are not a California resident, which most of you would likely fall into that category, your minimum GPA is going to be a 3.4. This is weighted, and this is only from 10th and 11th grade. So we are going to recalculate whatever you write on the application. We'll recalculate that for you to decide what your GPA is based on the courses and the grades that you've put in. So that minimum requirement is different. The out-of-state and international minimum GPA is higher, but most of our campuses are admitting much above this. So when we talk about these minimum academic factors, that's just it. That's just the minimum. If you think you're around here, we still encourage you to apply because we are not only looking at these academic factors, but that comprehensive review as well, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So ultimately, we want you to be well prepared. We want you to have taken challenging courses and to have done well in those courses. Now, this next slide that we're going to talk about confuses a lot of out-of-state students, families, counselors, and Ju and I have become some of the experts at the UC in helping you all figure out what you're supposed to do with this A through G. So if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out to either of us. We're happy to help. The A through G requirements, this is a kind of a standardized set of coursework that all California high schools incorporate into their curriculum. So we have created this framework that we expect all California students to incorporate into their courses. Now, for out-of-state students, we know not every high school in the country is going to offer exactly this, and that's okay. So if you're looking at this and you're saying, oh, wow, I didn't take a visual or performing art, a year of visual or performing art, because I did 4 years of a science and I just didn't have time in my schedule. Or maybe your school doesn't offer as much in the visual and performing arts. That's okay. What's important is if you are missing something on here, you let us know. While folks who recruit the DC area, Maryland, while folks who recruit in that area, like Ju and I, understand your high schools pretty well, we're still not experts in your high schools. And most of the application readers for the UC system are going to be experts in California high schools. So when you are entering your courses on the application, or when you are helping us better understand why you maybe don't have that visual or performing art, or why you did a different course structure than we might expect, explain it to us. Because those local recruiters might really understand, but those California application readers might not quite understand your high school. Many of them don't even understand how rigorous all of your high schools are. You're very fortunate to be in a county and a district that is very academically rigorous, and you have a lot of options. So we encourage that, and we're excited about that, but you might have to translate that and put that onto the application. So all of that to say, while we have these requirements, we do expect you to have a well-rounded curriculum. And if you're missing something on here, it's okay. You're still going to get a full review. You can still be admitted to all the UC campuses, but it's helpful for us if you just let us know in the additional comments. Jewel will talk more about that at the end. I do want to make a note here on this category G, college prep elective. Category G, college prep elective, is just saying, we want to make sure you have one other course to fill in that 15 A to G. So if you took 4 years of math instead of the 3 required, you've already satisfied letter G. All right, so now on to the next slide. Sorry about that. So with testing, now this is something that has kind of thrown everyone for a loop the last couple of years. When we look at testing, the University of California system, so all 9 of our campuses that you would be considering, have eliminated the use of the SAT or ACT for admissions decisions, for selection, for awarding our big scholarships. So if you've taken it, you do have the opportunity to type it into the application, but we will not be looking at it. So Jua and I, as application readers or any other application reader, it's redacted. So we cannot see your SAT or ACT score when we're reviewing your file. For admissions or for scholarships. This is important to level the playing field to some extent. It's also been really hard to get test dates. Things get canceled, things have been so moved around lately. So we're really excited about this. And to be honest, even before we eliminated this, it was just a small, tiny consideration. So eliminating it for the UCs has not made a big impact on our admissions process and our decisions. Where we can use exams, if you list your AP exams that you're planning to take or that you've taken, we can look at those. Same with IB, any international baccalaureate exams that you're planning to take, we can look to see what you're planning to take. If you are an international student, so if you have less than 3 years of high school at a school that taught in English, then you do have to prove your English proficiency. And this is where we can use an SAT, an ACT, an AP exam, or even something like the Duolingo English test to show that you've met that minimum English proficiency. But that's only if you're an international student and have spent fewer than 3 years at a high school where the language of instruction was English. All right, so what is that comprehensive review that we're talking about? So when you look at comprehensive review, this is really looking at all of those things. So it's not just the classes you took, not just the GPA, not just the whether you took the classes in the H or G, but everything else you would list on the application as well. Comprehensive review is the UC's way of saying we look at you in the big picture. My favorite way to break this down is to say, we're looking at what was your world, what was your environment, and how successful have you been in that environment. Now, every single one of you, all 20 some students, 30 some students or so that might be here today, anyone else that's listening to the recording, you each have a different environment, even if you're at the same high school, even if your next door neighbor is also applying to UCs. When you fill out the application, we really want to know, what kind of world are you in? We want to know your family world, your academic world. We want to know challenges that you had or special talents. We want to know about your activities and awards. We want to know about everything, not just those academics. Those academics are important, they're crucial, but we also want to know what else you are bringing to our campuses, but also what world you've experienced, because all of that helps us to better then understand why you chose the classes you did, why you got the grades you did. Maybe you had a blip, maybe, COVID really affected you. Let's say you had a little blip there, or maybe something else, or maybe you are amazingly talented in the arts and math just isn't your thing. All of that helps us to better understand what your world is and why your successes might look different in different areas. So as we're reading the application, this comprehensive review that we go through, we're really looking at every bit of information that you share to say, okay, what did you write? What did you know? What was your world? And what choices did you make in that world within the things that were in your control? What choices did you make to be successful and to be a great version of yourself? So we're going to walk you through all the steps in the application to show us these things, but these are all the things we're looking for. We're looking at the big picture of what you're telling us. We also give you an opportunity to write short essays to kind of fill in the gaps, to give us that narrative that we might lose just by looking at basically your transcript and your resume. We want to hear that narrative too, which is why we ask for that personal insight questions. So some things that I think are really important for out-of-state students is to know that the UC application is very different than the Common App, than other applications. It's very different than other highly selective. Many of our campuses are highly selective, but our application is designed different and we're reading it different. So first, it is all self-reported. That means that we are not going to look at your actual transcript. You have to type in your transcript, which is kind of frustrating, kind of annoying. And it takes a while. So just know you're going to have to put some time into that. But it's all self-reported. This also means that there are no counselor or teacher recommendation letters. So no one else is going to advocate for you. You have to advocate for you in the application. That means that you're going to have to brag about yourself. And I know that's very hard for many of our students to do because they're often very humble. They're maybe very accomplished, but also very humble, or maybe you don't think you have a lot to give. I promise you do. I promise you do. Every single app and every single student has something to offer. Now, the easiest way to brag about yourself is to quantify your experiences. Jill will talk a little bit more about that in the activities and awards section just a little bit, but you really need to do the bragging about yourself because no one else can do it for you in the UC process. The other thing, and I briefly already mentioned this, is that you need to describe your environment. So because when we do our comprehensive review, we're really saying, what was the student's world and how successful were they in that world? Well, we don't always know your world. We don't know your neighborhood. We don't know your high school. We don't know what your family or cultural situations are. We don't know what the context or the environment is around your extracurricular activities. An example of this is some high schools, it's very easy to join a varsity sport because maybe it's a smaller class size or maybe they're not very competitive in that area. I know your area and I know that sports in your area are pretty competitive, and even athletic opportunities in your area, or not athletic, academic opportunities in your area are also very competitive. So helping us understand that I was one of 20 students selected to be part of this specialized program out of over 100 who wanted to be a part of it. That's really great context. That's really great helping me understand your environment. So the UCs, we're not comparing student A to student B when we read applications. We're really comparing you to what you had access to. So what did you have access to? How did you take advantage of that? That will help us understand your success within your context. All right, so now shifting to the UC application and saying, what in the UC application do you need to do to help us understand this, to help us better read and review your files? Well, first for the UC application, it's going to be a long form. You all are part of our digital generation. You know how to fill out a form. You know how to type in your name, your family, all of that kind of stuff is pretty self-explanatory in the UC application. If you've kind of taken a look at the application yet, great. but you can't even start filling out the UC application until August 1st. So it hasn't even opened for this year yet. So this is really a preview of what you can begin to do starting August 1st. And once you're in there, you're going to see, okay, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to pick which campuses I want to apply to. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to list my my address, my email address. All those things are self-explanatory. Where it gets a little confusing are the parts that Ju and I are going to cover today. So the first is about entering your high school. So when you go to enter your high school, it is a little different than maybe you would do in a different form. So first you're going to list kind of you're going to search for your school. So just like type one name like Bethesda, and it'll come up Bethesda Chevy Chase, and you'll select it. And then you'll have a lot of decisions to make with that. You'll get to say, okay, on here, I was part of a specialized curriculum. So maybe I was part of the science magnet or the pre-health magnet program at my school. That's up at that first yellow arrow that you can point to and say, yep, I was part of this specialized program. It really helped me to, kind of focus my curriculum. So you have an opportunity to adjust that there and to state that there. You'll say what years you attended that school. So especially if you've attended more than one school, you'll actually go through this process more than once. So for every high school you've attended, you'll fill out this same form. Now, the next arrow that you see down there, I like to point this out because in California high schools, they don't regularly offer pass fail. And it's not really part of the California curriculum to do that. Now with COVID, it was introduced at a lot of schools. But for a lot of out-of-state high schools, that's just part of your normal curriculum to be able to take a class pass fail or credit no credit. However, that's not how the application's designed. So if you have your grades on here are, typically on your transcript are A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, F, you want to click this first one. But then if you also have the opportunity to take classes credit no credit and you've done that, you'll want to also click other and then type in either pass fail or credit no credit. And that'll give you opportunities to then add that into the grades that you're going to enter on the next step of the application. The last thing to mention on this page is that star at the bottom. This is another thing that's a little confusing in the design of our application. So now if you've taken a course and it's a full year course, so you started that class in September or August, and you're going to go all the way through May or June with that same class, and you're going to get one grade for that class, then you'll want to click full for the type of term system you're using. But if at the same time you also are taking some classes that maybe you took AP government for one semester, and then you're going to take AP history for the other, or you're going to take some other course, civics for the second semester, then you'll also want to put semester, because in that year you'll have 2 grades per term. So it's okay to select more than one. Anytime you see a square box, it means you can select more than one thing. So just make sure that you're selecting everything on this page, because this is going to decide what you see on the next page. So speaking of the next page that you'll see in the application is really going to show you how to enter your courses. So every single class that you took at your high school, you want to get your unofficial transcript from your counselor, pull it up into whatever software that you're able to access it. You're going to have to type out the name of every course. You're also going to need to then pick a category, an A through G subject area. If you don't see something that fits exactly, that's okay. Do your best. It's not an exact science here. So, if you think it fits into the algebra, trigonometry, great. If you think it fits into engineering, great. Whatever you think it fits the best in, you'll just pick whichever category. You'll type the name of your course. And then you're going to do a few things. You're going to have to use some drop-down boxes. Now, the first drop-down box, this one's really important. I'm going to pause, make sure everyone's listening, paying attention, look at the screen. Where you see honors type here, in this honors type section, you'll have the opportunity to select for every single class, whether it's honors level, IB for International Baccalaureate, AP for Advanced Placement, or NH for not honors. Every single class you have to pick one of those for. Now, probably the most of the classes you took in 9th or 10th grade are probably NH for not honors, but it's okay if some of those are honors level. Now you can see up at the top right of this section, it gives you a little key. And with NH not honors, if that's yours and it's just a regular class, that's what you want to pick. Now, where it says HL, it says UC approved honors level up at the top there where Jua's pointer is. So UC approved honors level, this is really talking about any honors course. So if on your transcript, it says honors math, honors English, go ahead and list it as HL on the application. It gets a little confusing because in California, we actually approve courses to say, yes, it's honors, no, it's not. We look at the syllabus for that high school class and give it a, an approval or not. For you being out of state, we don't do that process. But if your school calls it honors, go ahead and mark it honors. If your school calls it AP, go ahead and mark it AP. If you call it IB, go ahead and mark it IB, regardless of what it says with that UC approved. So that is really important. I do want to bring home that point because I think that's really important. Now, in that last row there, where you see term system, you see that red box. Now, if on that last page, you picked both full and semester, then you're going to have an option here. If you only pick semester, then you don't even have to use the dropdown. It's just automatically going to say semester there. Same for grading system. If you chose more than one grading system on the last page when you entered your school, it's going to show a dropdown here and you'll have to choose whether it was A, B, C, D, F or credit, no credit. And then for your grades, you'll have this dropdown list where you can choose what the grade was that you received. So I know it seems kind of straightforward, but because that first screen impacts what you see on this screen, it's helpful, I think, to just walk through it. All right, so you'll do that for every high school. You'll do that for every class you've taken. It takes a while. So even though our application isn't due till November 30th, you'll want to start getting this information in. You'll also, on this next page, you'll see that for any college level course that you took while in high school, you'll actually have to add the college and then again, add the courses as well. So this is if you took any classes at one of the community colleges or one of the four-year institutions. Let's say you took a summer class at a UC or you took a summer class at another college. This is where you're going to then enter that school, that college in the same process. And then you'll go and you'll enter those courses on the next screen after you enter your college. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jua to talk about the next section of the application.
All right, thanks, Andrea. All righty, so Andrea kind of really walked you through one of the key parts of just the application and information that we consider your academic preparedness, the rigor. Are you academically prepared to come onto one of our campuses and thrive? But another key component of the application and part of your personal backgrounds that we highly value is your extracurricular work. What are you all doing outside of the classroom? Are you spending your time productively? And Andrea talked about how we view you in context of where you are. Are you maximizing what's available to you based on what's at your school, your local community, at home, whatever that may be? This is a part of it. And so we really want to see, again, how are you spending your time? You will be able to submit up to 20 different activities and or awards in this section. And you see you have different categories that you can choose, from award and honors to extracurricular activity, volunteer community service, and so forth. So you really need to think about what you all have been doing with your time. How have you spent your time? If you all have a resume, pull it up, pull it out at this point, because again, you're self-reporting your information. So you really want to look at what you're doing to get a sense of, okay, which categories will I be placing my different activities and levels of, of involvement, and really thinking about which ones have the most meaning to you and really illustrate your interest to us in a very, in a great way. So that's really important to note. Now, I will say before we get to the next section, be very clear, be very cognizant about not repeating the same activity in multiple areas. So if you've been part of FBLA, you may not want to mention that in, let's say, extracurricular activities and educational preparation program. And typically it's not that, but I'm given as an example. You don't want to, you really want to make sure that you're giving yourself the flexibility to really incorporate all of the various things you're doing. So try not to repeat things, because you're going to then take away an opportunity where you could talk about something else that you're doing that's important to you. And then also, if you all, based on what you're doing, everybody's, time outside the classroom is spent very differently. There are some students who are very active in the school community. Everything that you're doing, a lot of it is school-based, but there are other students who are, a lot of what they do is not school-based. They may do strictly community service outside of the school and or maybe have a job. I have students who have, full-time jobs. There are also students who help mostly at home, so they don't have the time to really be involved in school in that way. They're helping with siblings and taking care of them, helping with homework, maybe taking them, to and from their activities. You may be helping take care of elders who live in your household. And a lot of students have different generations living in the same household. So everybody, all of these different experiences we value. So please know that. A lot of students feel like, if I don't have these kind of activities, that they're not valuable in our process. They are. But what you have to do is know how to then articulate that in the application and figure out which categories they may fit. It may fit, extracurricular activities or community service in your way. It's like, hey, my home is my part of my community and I'm involved in that way, or whatever that may be. So really take your time and figure out, based on what you're involved in, which particular category that you want to select. Now, it's really important that you are really focusing on what is your role within these organizations, activities, whatever. What's your particular role and your responsibilities and accomplishments? We really want you to focus your attention there and what you're sharing with us, rather than talking about the activity itself. I'm trying to learn more about you. That's the whole point of this application. We're trying to get to know you better to see if you're going to be a good fit for our campus. So talk about you. So what is your role? Maybe you are president of an organization. Maybe you founded something. Maybe you are captain of a team. What is your role? What are your responsibilities? And then what have you accomplished? Maybe you are captain of the robotics team, and due to your work and how you structured a particular team, you all won a national competition. So what are your accomplishments? That's very important to describe for these different activities. So when Andrea talked a little earlier about quantifying and qualify, that basically means you need to brag about yourself. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and then on the next slide, because it's a little better kind of shown. Try to stay away from acronyms for your different clubs or awards. A lot of us application readers for UC may be more familiar with our different organizations, activities in the state of California. They may not be as knowledgeable about something that may be specific to Montgomery County. So you really want to spell it out. Give us the full name of the activity or the organization. Don't just use an acronym. Or some students spell it out and then put an acronym, whatever. The bottom line is that you spell it out. You don't just lean just on the acronym. And then make sure, again, that you are utilizing the 250 character space, so it's limited, that you're utilizing it to the best of your ability. Be concise with your thoughts. Really think about how you're telling us about your role and responsibilities. So make sure that every word counts. That is highly important. I always say, don't beat around the bush. Get to the heart of the matter. Really spend time crafting your responses, so again, that you're maximizing your space. Now, a couple of great examples here. If you all have any coursework that you are taking that do not fit into the A through G categories. So a little earlier, Andrea talked about the A through G categories. So history and social science, English, along those lines. If you all are taking classes that do not fit in those A through G categories, you can list them in other coursework. So this is the section of the application where you will list them, and you can give us examples. They may be courses about leadership or religion courses, or non-academic courses such as like PE. Maybe you're an office assistant. This is where you put those type of courses in this section. And then educational preparation program. This could be everything from Upward Bound to Gear Up, Avid. So educational preparation programs, you would use this here and give us a sense again of the program. Again, how long did you participate? So this is just to give you an example of a couple of the categories and what may be what you would want to put in those, depending on your respective participation, what you're doing. And then kind of give you another example, honors and awards and extracurricular activities. This is a great example. You see this student's extracurricular, they're telling us the name of the activity, but they're telling us here, they've played since age 7. They're telling us their role, they are a goalie. But they're saying, hey, I've been part of the varsity team for 4 years. So we get sustained activity, which we value. They've been MVP of the team. So, and not to mention the team placed third in the 2020 regionals, Eastern, and not only that, they say Eastern states out of approximately 500 teams. They're very much quantifying the level of accomplishment. They're not just saying, you know, we placed in the 2020 regionals. Well, what's in part of the regionals? Is that within your county? Is that a few states? So they went into detail about what regionals meant and how many teams are participating to really show the level of accomplishment. So again, if you all are first in the national competition, say national, give us that level, tell us what you're doing. And then this student says traveling team, 8 years, and tell us it required extensive travel. So again, going back to what Andrew said, they're giving us information about their environment, their world, what's their day-to-day life. When you quantify these type of activities, that gives us a lot more to work with to better understand who you are, what's important to you, and again, your roles and responsibilities. And within all of this, leadership is key. So really take the time to talk about any leadership role that you had in any capacity, whether it's at the school or at home. But leadership is going to be very important to all of us. I'm going to shift over back to Andrew to talk about the personal insight questions, which are key in our process as well.
Thanks, Jua. So one of the things that I think people fixate on is that these personal insight questions are the only thing we're reading, and they put so much stake in these that they don't give the section Jua just talked about enough time. So I'm going to say the section Jua just talked about is really important. The academics and typing all in your transcript is great too, but you know, spending time on that extracurricular activities section and awards section, spend time there. Spend some time on the PIQs too. So the personal insight questions, we call these the PIQs. We give you 8 questions to choose from. You only have to pick 4. And these are short answers. So a maximum of 350 words for each of those 4 questions. We're hoping you get to the point. We're not looking for creative writing. We're not looking for flowery language. We're really looking to get to know you better. Again, to help us understand what was your world and what was your success in that world. So hopefully, as you're working on these, you're thinking about, okay, what did I just put in that extracurricular activities section? I just put that I'm, you know, a hockey goalie and MVP, but maybe in this section you talk about why you love hockey and what you get from that and your special talent in it and why you chose that of all the sports to choose from. So this gives a little bit more of the narrative that you might be adding to from that extracurricular activities section. Or it might provide a little more context for us in this personal insight question where you're telling a little bit more about, you know what, because I'm so active with hockey, I actually have to make some tough decisions about school or about how I spend my weekend. So these personal insight questions really are a great way for us to get to know you better. But it's to, again, help us understand what was your world, your academic world, your family world, your cultural world, your extracurricular worlds, and what were your successes in those. But in the PIQs, we get a lot of your world. This is where we get a lot of that context that we wouldn't maybe find elsewhere in the application. Now, all 8 of those questions are equal. We don't have a preference, and there's no advantage of choosing specific ones. Now, when we're looking at these personal insight questions or these PIQs, they're really complementing and filling in the gaps of the application. They're not standalone. So I would encourage you, as you're working on these personal insight questions, if someone says, oh, would you like me to read through your responses to see if they're good? Well, make sure they understand what you've already listed in the application so that they know it complements that. This is an area that helps set students apart. And it also is helping to tell your story. This is also that section that you can really brag about yourself. So in addition to that activities section, you can do a little bit more of that bragging about yourself here, about talking about how you're spending your time and about some of the awesome things you've done. Drop the names of that professor you're working with to do research from one of your universities nearby, or talk about how you're doing some wonderful things for the environment or for a political campaign. This is the space that you can really spend some time on that. Now, a great way to prepare for these is to have someone ask you the questions. So here's all 8 of the questions. We're not anticipating that these will be changing for this year. So you can pull these up on our website now. We'll give you a link at the end that has a worksheet even that can help you walk through these. But I encourage you to have someone ask you the question verbally and just verbally give them your response. but record it on your phone or a recorder, and then go back and type it up. See which 4 of the 8 were easiest to talk about for you, which ones you felt you had the most to say. Pick those, focus on those, type up those responses that you verbally recorded, type it up, and then go back and add in those quantifying details to really help us paint the picture in a quantified way or qualified way. So saying that I went to States, but only a couple teams got to go to States, or saying that in my AP government class, I was really seen as a leader, and here's why, and kind of helping us paint that picture of why. So these questions range from academics to activities to leadership to creativity to have you had a challenge in your life? Now, I often get students who will say, you know what, I had something that was like not that great that happened to me, but I don't want to come off like I'm complaining. So I understand that. And you don't have to tell us anything you don't feel comfortable about, but it is helpful for us to understand, again, the context that something is happening in. So if you've experienced cancer with a loved one, or the death of someone close to you, sometimes laying that groundwork in one of these questions and then telling us what you did from that, or what you learned from that, or where you're at now, or what academic thing that you want to pursue because of that. That can really, again, help paint that picture of what is your world and how successful have you been because of your world, or sometimes despite that world. So sometimes if you've had a really big challenge, but you've still been able to maintain that good GPA, we can see that right in the application by you telling us that in these personal insight questions. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jua to talk about the additional comments boxes.
All righty. So another part, kind of bridging from what Andrea talked about with the personal insight questions, another area where you all can provide us even more context, more information about yourself are 2 additional comment boxes. There's one that is attached to the academic history section. And we talked about, again, our different readers trying to understand your world, your academic environment. This is a great way to give us some really key information, whether it's regarding, hey, my school changed to a different grading system this term, or more importantly, one of the most important questions is, we have students whose grades may have been affected for a certain reason. Maybe your grades dipped over a semester, and it's very clear to us that your grades have been affected. This is where you explain to us what happened. What has affected your grades. Maybe it's a dip, it may be just one grade. That's an anomaly. This is where you can explain to us what happened. Please always explain. That is how you advocate for yourself in our process. Andrea mentioned earlier about self-reporting information, no letters of recommendation per se. You have to know how to advocate for yourself. So this is where you can tell us about anything regarding a dip in grades. Maybe there's something very special or very unique about your grading system at your school. Tell us here. All right. And something that you may want to do, and we've seen this a lot, is a lot of times we have students who may work with their counselor, college counselor, to help them maybe come up with a paragraph that, counselors think are important for us to know. You can work with your counselor to have that, copy and paste it into your application. So that's a way, again, the bottom line is for us to better understand your academic environment, and anything affecting your academic performance, utilize that section. And then that second additional comment box is right after the personal insight questions. And this is where you can tell us anything else that you think we may need to know. If you go through your application, and you feel like there's anything left that we need to know about you, utilize it. Any unusual circumstances. Andrea talked about, once again, about dealing with the pandemic. Maybe your life just overall has been affected in a very significant way. You can talk about it there, and maybe you haven't already shared that in one of the PIQs. You can, in the personal insight questions, you can talk about it in the additional comment box just to give us a little bit more information to work with. I will always stress this to students that more information is better than not enough. You don't want to have gaps in your story, any kind of thing that may be a potential red flag. Just tell us. That gives us more information to work with. We know how to go through the information. So you tell us all that you think we need to know to really put your best foot forward in this process. So anything else, again, that context is key. So please utilize the additional comment boxes. That is why they are there. Okay. Now, kind of wrapping this up, we're going to go just a quick timeline. So again, our application, and Andrea mentioned this a little earlier, the UC application goes live starting August 1st, strictly online, but that is when you can begin the application. Now, again, we talked about our timeline being and our application being very different than other applications. So again, we're not on the Common App, we're not on the Coalition, we're not on the Universal App, if that's still around. It is strictly the UC application, again, that goes live starting August 1st. With this application, once again, you can utilize this application to apply to any of the 9 UC campuses. You just have to submit one set of information and check off which campus that you want to apply to. Again, you will pay an application fee per campus. And you see the application fee is $70 per campus, $80 if you're an international student. However, through the process of filling out the application, you all can qualify for a fee waiver. If you do qualify, you can apply up to 4 UC campuses for free. Very important, and it can happen through the process, okay? Now, again, starting August 1st, you can start working on the application. We always suggest starting early, but you cannot submit your application until starting October 1st. And then the filing period to submit your application is October 1st through November 30th. So you have those 2 months to submit the application. November 30th being the hard, regular deadline. Okay, nothing beyond that. And we also do not have early action or early decision. So nothing binding, nothing that you have to submit earlier. November 30th is the one deadline. Okay, for those of you, if you have any kind of test, when we're talking more AP, IB exams per se, you have that period. Typically that would be more related to SAT and ACT when we were working with those. But if there are any tests that you're self-reporting that you need to submit, you can go ahead and submit those reports to us, AP, IB per se, but typically at this point, those are going to come in the summer. So you don't have to worry about that date at this point. Starting in March, typically we will notify you of the decision the latter part of March. If you are admitted, you have until May 1st to say yes or no to our offer. And then if you are admitted and you decide to attend, that is when we will start requesting those final high school transcripts and test score reports. And July 1st typically is the deadline to submit your official final transcript. So it gives you just an application timeline. And these timelines are on our different websites for our campuses. It's on the website for the University of California Office of the President. So you can always find this timeline. And really quickly, if you want to take a quick picture, these are some really great resources for you to take advantage of. Application procedures to kind of help you again navigating just the application. Please visit the website, take full advantage. Andrea gave you some great tips about the personal insight questions, but we have a very extensive and thorough website that gives you a lot of insight about each particular question, questions to think about and answering them, ways to approach answering them. Take advantage of that. And then during the application process, when you're applying, if you have any questions, technical questions, anything about the application, please reach out to the UC Application Help Desk. Again, they handle the application for all 9 of our campuses. You can email them and or give them a call. So please make sure that you tap into that resource for, again, if you have questions. Finally, again, my name is Jua Howard, Assistant Director, Mid-Atlantic Region is my region, so I'm your point of contact. Here's my email address. Once we wrap up in a moment, I'll also put a few links into the chat for you all if you want to learn more about UC Berkeley specifically. And I'll hand it over back to Andrea to wrap up for our standpoint, and we'll take some questions after we do that, okay? We have a few more minutes.
Thanks, Jua. If anyone's interested in learning more about UCI specifically, or we're going to do some more in-depth UC application workshops this fall virtually, feel free to scan that and you'll be on our mailing list, and it'll just show that you're here today as well. And yeah, we're just really excited to see your applications this fall at one of our campuses, or hopefully a couple. And we can't wait to get to know you better through the application and with any questions that you might have. So with that, feel free to drop your questions into the chat box and we can go from there.
Definitely. Right. So we have one question from Anna. Let's see.
So the question is about the IB diploma program. Yes, so there's a few places on the application that you would be listing an IB program. So first is when you enter your school, there's a section right at the top of entering your school where you can list if you're part of a magnet program or an IB program. So you'd mark that you're part of the IB program there. And then when you get to the exam section, you can list any of your planned exams. So whatever standard and higher level exams you're planning to take, go ahead and put those. If you've already happen to have taken one, great, you can list that. And then in the PIQs or the academic history, in the additional comments or in that personal insight questions section. Either one, you can talk a little bit more about the program and what it meant to you and what you learned from it. If that's something that you are really passionate about and want to talk about. Even just us seeing that you took the classes and you took the exams and that you marked it as part of your school curriculum, that's enough.